Hello everyone, welcome to this weekly video. In this video, we're gonna be modeling this Borderlands 2 inspired device. Also, if you wanna watch the video in real time, there's gonna be a link in the description for my Patreon if you would like to support. I would greatly appreciate it because that will help me keep making these types of videos. Like always, we're gonna start with the blockout. We're gonna define first the main shapes and then we're gonna continue from there. Here, with the help of the references, we start adding the main landmarks, and little by little we start adding more details. While making the blockout, I realized that the drawings were not exactly the same as the references, so I decided to take some liberties with the design. While working on the blockout, it's important to not get distracted with topology issues and leave those for the end. Also from this point, I'm already deciding which pieces are gonna be separate and which pieces are gonna be part of the same piece. during the modeling part, it's also really important to keep in mind what parts of the model are going to be baked down and what parts are going to be part of the mesh. This is really important because it helps you work faster and better, already knowing what you're going to bake down and what you're going to keep. While working on the screen and the screen cover, I started doing the Boolean operation for where the screen would go in the mesh, but then I realized that you would never see that part and undo it and just kept the screen on top of the actual mesh with the screen cover being on top of where the hole would be. So that's also really nice to consider when modeling what it's worth modeling and what's worth just giving the idea that's happening. Also, that's really important in game assets because the better you're able to not use geometry for something and still give the idea that there's a hole there or there's a piece there, the better. For the cables, I started by adding the curves and giving the main shape of the path. After having the curves like I wanted them, I added the sweep mesh to each of them to make the cable mesh. Once I finished with each of them, I then tweaked it a little bit to make them more natural and finish the cables. Here, after finishing the blockout, we start adding the details and making some boolean operations for later cleanup and making them final. For this game asset, I decided to use the ZBrush workflow since it's faster and it's nice to work to make some nice bevels for the high poly. One of the advantages of this workflow is that you don't have to worry about topology until you get into the low poly, and that's a great thing when you're working with game assets. Here, after seeing me finish this piece in ZBrush, I then proceed to do the button holders with regular subdivision modeling. So that's a good thing about the ZBrush workflow, that is that you're not constrained to only use that for the whole model. You can pick and choose where and when to use it. So that's a nice thing to use both workflows when you're working on game assets. another thing about the ZBrush workflow is that it's very flexible. For example, here you can see me, instead of doing the booleans beforehand in Maya, I take it first to ZBrush, and in ZBrush I do the boolean operations, and then I apply the bevels here in ZBrush. So you can pick and choose if you want to do them back in Maya or work on them here in ZBrush, and then finish up the high poly mesh. During this part of the process, you're gonna see me do what I just mentioned, which is decide which pieces from the model are gonna be with subdivision regular modeling and which ones I'm gonna take into ZBrush to finish them up. For example, these ones that are very simple, I just do the regular bevels for the supports, and then I think after this one I grab another one and take it into ZBrush. For example, this one I just clean it up a little bit and I leave it with the subdivisions for high poly, and this one that has a boolean operation, I think it's easier to just take it into ZBrush, prepare the mesh, and then apply the bevels here and take it back like super quickly, instead of worrying about the topology and how it's gonna work, because I don't care about the topology for the high poly, I just care that it looks nice for the bake. So that's why I like the ZBrush workflow, because it can save you time with some pieces that would take you longer with the regular subdivision. For example, this one is pretty simple. I just add the support loops and then I clean it up a little bit and it's done for high poly. So in this part, you're just watching me go piece by piece, finishing them up for the high poly, applying the material just to see if it's smoothing correctly. This one, for example, this cylinder with the hole in the middle, it will take a while and maybe you wouldn't be able to get it in short enough of time without any pinching on the corners and the boolean. But with the ZBrush workflow, it's really simple and you cannot see any pinching. So for this one is a perfect example of how quick and good doing it in ZBrush it is. This one is another example of just regular quick subdivision modeling. This one as well, just the supports, adding some more edges for the subdivisions, applying the material and checking them out, checking everything is smoothing correctly. This one is really nice example as well. It's a boolean operation, but instead of difference, it's a union, and with ZBrush it's really easy to do the bevels for the high poly. So yeah, I'll leave you with the time lapse after this explanation on what I'm doing. for the cracks in the glass, I decided to keep it simple, and I just used some already made brushes I found online and stamped it on the glass, and then I exported back the high poly mesh to use that for the base. So with our high poly finished, we start doing the low poly and cleaning it up. We start by removing every edge or hole that we're not gonna need. At the beginning, you're gonna see here in the video that I didn't delete the front hole, but in the end I decided to remove it completely. But you'll see in the video, but here you'll see me cleaning it up, but afterwards I'll delete it. Also on the corners where I have edges making the bevels, I remove some of them, like every other edge, to reduce the topology, but I still don't make it super low poly because this is more of a portfolio piece and not like completely game ready prop asset, even though with more cleanup we can take it there. Just this is for presentation purposes and to make the video like more interesting. But the process for making it more low poly and more optimized is the same. Like we just keep removing topology where we don't need it and get the best optimized mesh we can. Here you can see me combine the top holder to make it just one piece to keep it cleaner, and also here for the cables, instead of having one cylinder for each cable, I made one big box extruded along the path, and then keeping it snug with the cables so that it's baked properly. With this technique, afterwards we're gonna need to do the material ID for each cable, so it's easier for us to select the materials we're gonna be using in Substance Painter. Otherwise, we're gonna have to paint by hand, and it would be impossible to keep it perfect. So with the material ID, we'll make our lives easier. So yeah, for the low poly, it's pretty much it. Just looking where you can remove topology and keeping it clean. After finishing with the low poly, I started with the UVs. The UVs are pretty straightforward. It's just like the regular workflow, cutting and leaving the soft and hard edges where you would want them, straighten the UVs, make them nice and ready for texturing. Also, I started laying out the model for the bake. I separated the parts that I didn't want the AO to affect with other pieces, the ones that I was gonna duplicate and whatnot. So In this time lapse, I didn't keep that much of the UVs. There's just like this you're watching and some parts where I lay out the UVs, but for the most part, that's it. If you're interested in knowing exactly how the UVs are done, like you never worked on UVs before, you can leave down a comment and let me know, and I can do a specific video of explaining the whole process of UVing something. So I can record a simple model getting the UVs done so you can learn the basics and watch the whole workflow in real time. Also, of course, in the non-time-lapse version of this video in my Patreon page, you can watch the whole UVing process, but there's no commentary. Also, I have available a premium course with the whole process of doing 3 game-ready assets, and there's no cuts and there's full commentary in those for the UVs and the whole process. So if you're interested, you can also grab that and learn the whole game pipeline with 3 different assets. But yeah, I'll leave you with the time-lapse, the rest of the UVs, and the bake preparation for you to watch. Here, before continuing to marmoset toolbag for the bakes, I decided to add some simple tape mesh to make it more interesting, like in the reference. In the reference it has 2 pieces, one here on the holder and one holding the cables. So I decided to add some very simple mesh representing where the tape would be. And there's multiple ways you can do this. One that is like the more detailed one is making the mesh like I'm doing here in the video, and then taking that mesh into ZBrush, and then in ZBrush applying like all the details, the micro details, and the folds and whatnot, and make it look like tape. And then in Substance Painter continuing refining the shapes, I mean not the shapes, the details, and then the textures. But since this is a very simple tape for a very simple part of the mesh, I decided to keep it more simpler. So I made the base mesh, and then in Substance Painter I added the folds and all the textures and the details without going into ZBrush for the sculpting part. So I finished the base mesh of the each mesh tape, and then I did the UVs quickly and redid the layout for the complete model, since this is a new piece and it needs to be in the same texture set. Which it's an important moment to mention that I decided just to do one set, since this is a gaming asset. So I did a 4K texture for this one, but like I mentioned earlier, you wouldn't do 4K for something like this. But since this is like a presentation model or portfolio model, I decided to take some liberties with the texture resolution and the topology count. Even though it's still low poly, it's higher than it might be inside of a game. But yeah, here you can see me finishing the UVs for the top part, and then I start doing the tape for the cable part. So yeah, I'll leave you with this time lapse of the tapes, and then I'll continue commenting on the next part. So yeah, after finishing the tapes, the UVs, and the baking preparation again for the whole model, I take it into Marmoset Toolbag as you're watching on screen right now, and then I fix any baking errors like the holes you just watched me paint over for a better bake. I then bake the AO. I plug the maps into Substance Painter. We fix the viewport in Substance Painter, and I start preparing the tapes like you're watching here. So for the tapes, it's like I did it like pretty simple, but it looks nice in the end. So I use just a texture map to do the wrinkles, and then with that wrinkles I gave it an anchor point to make some color variation for the tape and make it look more realistic. And this like what you're watching right now on screen is just literally the wrinkles, the material definition, and some color variation, and it still looks nice. Once I start texturing, I start adding like some more dirt, dust, and roughness to the tape, and it looks better. But like I said, keeping it simple like it is right now on screen, it's still nice. It still looks nice. So imagine if you would take it into ZBrush and do the sculpting, it would look way better. But for this model, I thought this method would work nice. Then here you can see me, I started with the screen since I thought it was a pretty important part of the model. I wanted it to make, I wanted for it to look nice. First I used the greenish old TV look because I thought it would look cool on this asset. but once I continue texturing the screen, I didn't quite like it. Also in the main reference, it's like a darker screen, like a more modern screen. So I end up changing the color to a darker one instead of this greenish one. But yeah, I think either way would have looked nice, but I thought it would be better for this project to stay true to the concept we were working on. Oh, and yeah, this is a perfect time to talk about this. I said this model is inspired by the Borderlands 2 concept I found, because when I saw it, I thought it would be nice to make the model but with realistic textures, and that's what I'm doing. And also on the render you watch at the beginning of the video, that's why the textures are not stylized like the game. I know the textures for Borderlands are iconic and really nice and they look really cool, but for this video I wanted to do like something different, and I kept everything like more realistic, and I thought it turned out nice, each on its own style. But yeah, here you can see me use different methods to play with the roughness variation, the dirt, the materials with the screen, and it's starting to look nice. So after the screen, I'm gonna start defining each material for the whole model and start refining each of those. I wanted to take also this time to mention that the whole process for the texturing is not gonna be here on this video, even on the time lapse, because I thought it was a lot and maybe you wouldn't get enough from it. But also, like I said before, you can find the whole uncut and no time lapse version of this texturing process on my Patreon page. And also I was thinking, and this is where I'm asking you, if you would want a YouTube video of me texturing an asset and explaining exactly what I'm doing, let me know and I'll do it. Maybe even for this model I retextured it, or comment over the video with no time lapses. So yeah, let me know what would work better for you. Or again, I can mention the premium course I have where I model three models, 3 game ready assets. There's also like the texturing process completely uncut and commented there. But let me know if you would want a YouTube video as well, or whatever would work for you. I can do that. So yeah, thank you, and I'll leave you with the time lapse for the texturing part. During this part of the texturing process, I realized that my curvature map was not working for some reason. So I went back to Marmoset toolbag and baked just the curvature map and took it back into Substance Painter. And now, as you can see on the screen, now the curvature map is working. So I'm giving some edge highlight, and then I would want some edge wear, but I was not able to do it because the curvature map was not working and it was not detecting the edges. So yeah, that's also another important part when you have your maps baked, and even if you're somewhere far in the texturing process, you're not set to whatever you have at that moment. Since this is a non-destructive workflow, you can go back and rebake the curvature map, bring it on, and nothing changes. Like, you just can keep working, and if you mess up in something, you can fix it pretty easily. So yeah, I also wanted to mention that. Here in this part of the texturing process, you can see me go back from Maya, Substance Painter, and Photoshop. And that's because I was thinking on how I should do the markings for those knobs, and I ended up deciding just to do it inside Substance Painter since it's something pretty simple. So I just painted by hand the line, and then I added some blur to make it look more realistic and blended together. And that's how I decided to do the lines for the knobs. Later in the video, you're gonna see me use other markings, like for the numbers around the knobs, or the words on air, the push me, or the buttons. For those, I decided to create them in Photoshop, which was pretty simple, using the UV snapshot, and then you see me here plugging it in. So that's another interesting part about the texturing process, the different ways you can use maps or your UVs to paint different parts of the model. Also here, another thing worth mentioning is for these lines, I decided to work on them here in Substance Painter, but there's also multiple ways you could do it. You can also take the model way before when working on the high poly and painting them in the high poly and bake them back into the low poly. But I thought it would be way easier working on them here in Substance Painter, since it's pretty easy just to make them and apply some filters to make them look nice and blended. Here you can see me, at first I made them very thick and big, and then I fixed them and made them like more narrower and nicer. So yeah, I thought this was also worth mentioning. Another way you can make some lines or panel lines or whatever to make your model look nicer. Here I did something similar for the speaker details. I grabbed the basic hard brush and play with some of the settings to make the spacing look closer to the reference. And then I added a black depth layer to make it look like it's going inside the model. And as you can see, I made them too big at first, like the lines, and then I fixed them to the proper size, and I think they look nice, and they are quite easy to make without having to work on them with in the high poly, which is also easy, but it's nice to have multiple ways of doing something. Like I mentioned before, here is where I'm using the maps I created in Photoshop to put the text on the model, and I'm creating by color an anchor point for the mask to add some also roughness variation, or make it look like it's peeling off from the model, like it's actually weared down, and that's a nice way you can have more control over the text you're applying with the anchor point. It's really nice that you can individually work on the roughness or color variation, height if you would want, or the wear. You can see there on the on-air letters, there's some of the letters erased, and that's thanks to the using the anchor point in some texture map to make it look like that. Also, the push me on the button is literally just my handwriting in Photoshop, and then using a layer to paint it in here in Substance on top of the button. So yeah, this is what I was mentioning. There's multiple ways of doing it. You can also here in Substance Painter just write it down and create the letters here, but I sometimes prefer to do the extra step in Photoshop and do it like that. But it's up to you. There's multiple ways you can do it. Yeah, here you're just watching me add some extra details to the missing parts. For example, this switch. You saw me just finish adding some roughness variation to the glass, maybe the emissive map, and just tweaking up like the end parts before taking it to Marmoset to like the final renders and whatnot. So yeah, this was it for this model. Thank you so much for watching it, and I hope you find it useful. Remember that if you would want to get the files like the Maya file, Substance Painter file, or even just the video with no time lapse and no cuts, you can get it on my page, and I would love and appreciate the support so I can keep making more videos like these. And yeah, in the comments, let me know what else you would like to watch here on YouTube for me to model, or if you want a video of me explaining the UV's workflow or the texturing an asset, let me know and I'll try to work on that for you. Here you're watching just the render preparation and the final renders. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.